First Contact Protocol. The Galactic Council patrol vessel Harmonious Observer glided through the darkness at the edge of settled space, its sensors sweeping methodically across the void. Commander Zivtal stood on the bridge, his four arms folded behind his back as he watched the stars through the massive view screen. The ship's routine border patrol had been uneventful for weeks, exactly how patrols should be. "Commander," called out Sensor Officer Ela, her voice unusually tight. "Unknown vessel detected at coordinate block 47 to 2391, approaching from uncharted space." Zivtal turned, his crystalline eyes narrowing. "Classification: unknown, sir. The design matches nothing in our database." Ela's slender fingers danced across her console. "It's large. Military-grade shielding detected. Weapons systems active but not targeting." "Bring us to alert status," Zivtal ordered. "Open a standard greeting channel on all frequencies." The bridge hummed with activity as the crew prepared for potential conflict. The Harmonious Observer wasn't a warship. It was a diplomatic vessel with defensive capabilities. If this unknown ship had hostile intentions, they would need to retreat rather than engage. "Sir," called Ela, her voice dropping to a whisper, "preliminary biological scans indicate humans." The bridge fell silent. Humans were a species the Council had encountered only briefly, a primitive civilization on a blue-green world at the edge of the galaxy. According to the records, humans had only recently achieved limited interstellar travel with crude, short-range vessels. They certainly shouldn't have a warship this far from their home system. "That's impossible," Zivtal said. "Run the scan again." "Confirmed, sir. The energy signatures are consistent with human biorhythms. But this vessel, it's far beyond their known technological capabilities." Before Zivtal could respond, the communications officer raised a hand. "Commander, we're receiving a transmission. Audio and visual, using standard galactic code." "On screen," Zivtal ordered, his posture stiffening. The view screen flickered, and the image of a human appeared. The being had dark skin with a close-cropped crown of tightly curled hair, wearing what appeared to be a military uniform, navy blue with silver insignia Zivtal didn't recognize. "Greetings, Galactic Council vessel," the human said, the translator converting their speech with only a slight delay. "This is Captain Maya Chen of the United Earth defense ship Defiant. We request immediate communication with Galactic Council leadership. This is an urgent matter concerning the safety of multiple sapient species." Zivtal exchanged glances with his second-in-command before responding. "This is Commander Zivtal of the Galactic Council vessel Harmonious Observer. Your presence here is unexpected. Our records indicate that your species has not yet developed long-range interstellar travel." The human captain's face remained composed, but something like weariness crossed her features. "Your records are outdated, Commander. We were forced to accelerate our technological development due to circumstances I need to discuss with the Council. Behind us is a refugee fleet carrying the survivors of 3 human colonies. We've been traveling for almost 2 standard years." Refugees. Zivtal's secondary hearts quickened their pace. "From what threat?" Captain Chen's expression darkened. "We call them the Void Swarm. They appeared at the edges of our settled systems without warning. They consume everything: planets, ships, people. Nothing we tried could stop them until—" She hesitated. "Until we developed technologies that shouldn't have been possible for us. That's part of why I need to speak with the Council." Zivtal felt a cold sensation in his spine. The Council had protocols for first contact scenarios, but nothing that covered a supposedly primitive species appearing with advanced warships and tales of an unknown cosmic threat. "Captain Chen, we will transmit your request to Central Command. How far behind you is this refugee fleet?" 3 days at our current velocity. The Defiant traveled ahead to establish contact and ensure safe passage. Many of our ships are damaged, and our supplies are critically low. "Stand by, Captain." Zivtal gestured for the communications to be muted. He turned to his senior staff. Opinions? His second-in-command, a Threlsian with feathered appendages, spoke first. Sir, this could be of deception. An advanced species could be using human biosignatures to trick us into lowering our defenses. Or, countered the ship's xenobiologist, the humans could have received technological assistance from an unknown third party. What if they're telling the truth? Asked the youngest officer on the bridge, her scales shifting to a troubled purple hue. If there's a new threat consuming entire worlds. Zivtal raised a hand for silence. We follow protocol. We inform Central Command and maintain position until we receive instructions. But we also prepare for both peaceful and defensive scenarios. He reactivated the communication channel. Captain Chen, we will maintain position here while we consult with our leadership. In the meantime, perhaps you would consent to a small delegation visiting your vessel. It would help us verify your claims and prepare appropriate assistance for your refugees. The human captain nodded. Agreed, Commander. We welcome your delegation. And, she hesitated, we appreciate your caution. In your position, I would do the same. 6 hours later, Zivtal found himself aboard the human warship, accompanied by his xenobiologist and security chief. The vessel was unlike anything he had seen before, a strange blend of technologies that shouldn't work together but somehow did. The corridors were utilitarian but clean, illuminated by soft blue lighting that pulsed gently. Some of our systems might seem unusual, Captain Chen explained as she led them toward what she called the command center. We had to improvise with what we had available. The xenobiologist, Dr. Nels, couldn't contain her curiosity. Captain, our records indicate that humans had only developed basic fusion drives. This vessel appears to use a form of spatial folding technology. Necessity forced innovation, Chen replied, her voice tight. When the swarm destroyed our first colony, we realized conventional weapons and drives wouldn't be enough. Our scientists began experimenting with theoretical physics that we hadn't expected to master for centuries. They entered the command center, a spacious room with control stations arranged in concentric circles around a central holographic display. Officers worked quietly at their stations, some turning to glance at the alien visitors before returning to their duties. This is our current situation, Chen said, gesturing to the holographic display. It showed their position relative to Council space, and behind them, a scattered formation of ships. The refugee fleet. 37 vessels carrying just over 80,000 survivors. Many are civilian craft not designed for long-term space travel. We've lost 11 ships during our journey. Zivtal studied the display, noting the efficiency of the information presentation. And this void swarm. Do you have visual records? Captain Chen nodded to one of her officers, and the display changed. The image that appeared sent a chill through Zivtal's body. A seething mass of darkness punctuated by points of sickly green light, flowing like liquid across the surface of a planet. Where it touched, matter simply disappeared. They don't communicate, Chen said quietly. They don't negotiate. They just consume. We managed to destroy small groups with concentrated energy weapons, but for every one we destroyed, 10 more appeared. How did you escape? Asked the security chief, his voice hushed. We discovered they have a vulnerability to certain frequencies of tachyon radiation. It doesn't destroy them, but it repels them long enough for ships to escape. Our warships stayed behind to hold them off while the civilian fleet fled. The Defiant is one of only 3 military vessels that survived. A communication officer approached Chen and whispered something in her ear. She nodded and turned back to the delegation. Commander, we've detected a void swarm scout approximately 12 light-years from here, moving in this direction. If they followed us. Zivtal straightened. We need to inform the Council immediately. As if on cue, his communication device chimed. The voice of his communications officer came through, tense and urgent. Commander, we've received instructions from Central Command. You and the delegation are to return immediately. The Council wishes to speak directly with the human representatives. Captain Chen's eyes met Zivtal's. "It seems our time for caution has run out, Commander." Back aboard the Harmonious Observer, Zivtal established a direct link to the Council chamber. The massive view screen filled with the images of the 7 High Counselors, each representing one of the founding species of the Galactic Alliance. "High Counselors," Zivtal began, "I present Captain Maya Chen of the human vessel Defiant." The Central Counselor, an ancient Moravian with luminescent skin patterns, leaned forward. "Captain Chen, your arrival has caused considerable concern among our members. Humans were assessed as a pre-contact civilization, yet here you are with technology that rivals our own." Chen stood with military precision before the screen. "Respected counselors, necessity drove our advancement. The threat we face, the Void Swarm, gave us no choice but to evolve or perish." "We have reviewed the data Commander Zivtal transmitted," said another counselor, their insectoid features clicking slightly as they spoke. "If accurate, this Void Swarm represents a significant threat. Yet we have no record of such an entity in our 12,000 years of galactic exploration." "They came from beyond the galactic rim," Chen replied. "From the darkness between galaxies. Our astronomers detected unusual disturbances in the void just weeks before the first attack." The council members exchanged glances. Finally, the Central Counselor spoke again. "Captain Chen, the Council will need time to verify your claims and determine an appropriate response. In the meantime," Chen stepped forward, interrupting. A breach of protocol that made Zivtal wince. "Counselors, with respect, we don't have time. My people are exhausted, our resources nearly depleted. And if the scout vessel we detected is indeed Void Swarm, they will call others. Not just my refugees, but your border worlds could be at risk within days." Silence fell across the communication channel. Then, a counselor Zivtal recognized as the representative of the warrior Kaldraxian species spoke. "I propose we dispatch a defensive fleet to this location immediately. If this threat is real, we must be prepared. If it is not," the counselor's 4 eyes narrowed, "then we will deal with the humans accordingly." The Central Counselor nodded slowly. "Agreed. Commander Zivtal, you will remain with the human vessel. Captain Chen, your refugee fleet may proceed to the nearest Council outpost for temporary sanctuary, escorted by our ships. But know this, if we detect any deception, the consequences will be severe." Chen's shoulders relaxed slightly. "Understood, Counselor. And thank you." As the communication ended, Zivtal turned to the human captain. "You took a great risk interrupting the Council." Chen's lips curved in what Zivtal recognized as a human smile, though it contained no warmth. "When you've watched worlds die, Commander, protocol seems less important than survival." For the first time since the strange vessel had appeared on his sensors, Zivtal felt something beyond caution, a flicker of respect for these humans who had traveled so far, carrying the remnants of their civilization with them. "Let us hope," he said quietly, "that your risk proves worthwhile for all our sakes." The alliance forged. 3 standard days after the Council's decision, the human refugee fleet arrived at the designated coordinates. Zivtal stood on the observation deck of Outpost Sentinel-7, watching as the vessels emerged from the darkness of space, a ragtag collection of ships that spoke of desperation and determination in equal measure. "Remarkable that they made it this far," said Director Len, the outpost administrator. The Solavian's translucent skin pulsed with concerned patterns of blue and green. "Some of those vessels appear to be repurposed mining craft. Others look like they were never meant for deep space travel at all." "Humans are resourceful," Zivtal replied, thinking of what he had seen aboard the Defiant. "They adapt when necessary." The outpost had been in a frenzy of preparation since receiving the Council's orders. Temporary habitation modules had been constructed in the station's unused cargo bays. Medical facilities had been expanded. Food synthesizers had been programmed with human nutritional requirements based on the data provided by Captain Chen. "The Council fleet is still 2 days out," Director Len noted, consulting her datapad. Until then, we have minimal defensive capabilities if this swarm should appear. As if summoned by her words, alarms began to sound throughout the station. A communications officer's voice came over the station-wide system. Unknown energy signature detected at the edge of our sensor range. Pattern matches the description of void swarm entities. Zivtal's blood ran cold. How many? Single entity, Commander. Small, approximately the size of a scout vessel. Director Len was already moving toward the command center, with Zivtal close behind. Alert the human vessels. Prepare defensive measures. In the command center, the main view screen showed a dark, amorphous shape moving through space, occasional pulses of sickly green light emanating from within its mass. It was still distant, but moving steadily toward the station and the vulnerable refugee fleet. "We're receiving a transmission from the Defiant," reported a communications officer. Captain Chen's face appeared on a secondary screen. "We've detected the swarm scout. Request permission to engage before it can summon others." Director Len hesitated, her authority suddenly challenged by this unfamiliar situation. Zivtal stepped forward. "The Defiant has experience fighting these entities. I recommend we allow them to lead the defensive action." After a moment's consideration, Len nodded. "Granted, Captain Chen. But our station's defense systems will support you." "Acknowledged. We're moving to intercept." On the main screen, they watched as the Defiant broke formation from the refugee fleet and accelerated toward the void swarm entity. The warship's engines flared with unusual purple-white energy. "What are they doing?" murmured one of the station's tactical officers. "They're not charging weapons." Instead, the human ship began emitting a pulsing field of what the sensors identified as tachyon radiation, precisely modulated in a complex pattern. The void entity slowed, then seemed to recoil from the approaching vessel. "It's working," Zivtal said, watching in fascination. "They're repelling it." But then the entity did something unexpected. It seemed to fold in upon itself, becoming more dense, more concentrated. The sickly green lights within its mass brightened to an almost blinding intensity. "Captain Chen, the entity is changing its configuration," Zivtal called out. "Be cautious." Too late, the entity suddenly expanded, sending out a wave of energy that struck the Defiant like a physical blow. The human ship's lights flickered, and it began to drift. "Direct hit to our primary systems," Chen reported, her voice steady despite the chaos visible on her bridge. "Tachyon emitters offline. We need backup." Without waiting for orders, the station's tactical officer activated their defensive systems. Energy beams lanced out toward the void entity, striking it directly, but passed through as if it were merely shadow. "Conventional weapons ineffective," the tactical officer reported unnecessarily. Director Len turned to Zivtal. "Suggestions, Commander." Before he could respond, another voice broke in. The chief engineer of the station, a Tellarite with a reputation for brilliant, if unorthodox, solutions. The humans' tachyon field was working, but they couldn't maintain it when attacked. "What if we use our station's power core to amplify a similar field?" "That would require reconfiguring our entire defense grid," Len objected. "And quickly," added Zivtal, watching as the Defiant struggled to restore power while the void entity began moving again, this time toward the vulnerable refugee fleet. "We can do it," insisted the engineer. "But we'll need the human specifications for their tachyon emitters." "I'll get them," Zivtal said, already opening a channel to the Defiant. What followed was a frantic cooperation between species that had been strangers just days before. Human engineers transmitted their designs to the station, while the outpost's technical teams worked to adapt the alien technology to their systems. Meanwhile, the Defiant managed to restore enough power to place itself between the void entity and the refugee fleet, buying precious time. "Ready to activate," called the Tellarite engineer after 47 intense minutes. The station hummed as power was diverted to the newly configured defense grid. A field of shimmering energy expanded outward, enveloping both the station and the refugee fleet. When it reached the void entity, the effect was immediate. The dark mass contorted, its green lights dimming as it retreated from the field's influence. "It's working," breathed Director Len. "Not for long." Chen's voice came through the comm. "These fields only repel them temporarily. We need to destroy it before it adapts or calls for reinforcements." "But how?" asked Zivtal. "Your weapons were ineffective, as were ours." There was a pause before Chen responded. "We have one option. During our flight, we discovered that if we collapse a tachyon field suddenly while an entity is within it, the resulting energy release can disrupt their cohesion. But it requires precise timing. And what, Captain?" prompted Len when Chen hesitated. "And it's dangerous. The energy release could damage nearby vessels or stations. We never attempted it near civilian populations." Zivtal studied the tactical display. The entity was still retreating, but its movements had become more erratic, as if testing the boundaries of the tachyon field. "If we don't destroy it, what happens?" "It reports back to the main swarm," Chen said grimly, "and then they come in force." Director Len straightened, her decision made. "We'll evacuate critical areas of the station and concentrate shields." "Proceed with your plan, Captain." Working together, the station's crew and the Defiant's engineers calculated the precise moment to collapse the tachyon field. The refugee fleet moved to the farthest edge of the station's protective range. "Collapse in 3, 2, 1, counted the Tellerate engineer. The tachyon field vanished. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then the void entity seemed to implode, the green lights within it flaring brilliantly before being extinguished. A shockwave of energy radiated outward, striking the station with enough force to throw crew members from their stations. When the emergency systems cleared the view screens, there was nothing left of the entity but dispersing particles. "We did it," said Chen, her image flickering back onto the screen. Entity destroyed. The next 2 days passed in a flurry of activity. As promised, the Council fleet arrived, bringing with it scientific teams eager to study both the human technology and the remains of the void entity. What they discovered sent ripples of concern through the Council. The entity was indeed a scout, reported the lead xenobiologist during an emergency conference. Its biological structure, if we can call it that, is unlike anything in our records. And the residual energy patterns suggest it was in constant communication with others of its kind. "Which means they know where we are," Chen said, stating what everyone feared. The Central Counselor's holographic image dominated the conference room. "Then we must prepare. Captain Chen, the Council has reviewed all available data. We believe your warnings about this void swarm." Relief visibly washed over the human captain. "Thank you, Counselor. However," the Counselor continued, "we remain concerned about your species' rapid technological advancement. The integration of tachyon field technology with spatial folding drives should have been beyond your capabilities." Chen met the Counselor's gaze steadily. "With respect, Counselor, when faced with extinction, impossibilities become merely challenges. We didn't have the luxury of following normal technological progression." The Caldraxian Counselor's image leaned forward. "You improvised." "We had to," Chen confirmed. "Our scientists had theories but lacked the resources to implement them properly. So we adapted, found workarounds, used what we had available." This seemed to satisfy the Caldraxian, who nodded with what might have been approval. The mark of a warrior species. Over the next several days, Council scientists worked alongside human engineers to understand and improve upon their makeshift technologies. What emerged was a fascinating picture. Humans lacked the advanced theoretical knowledge of many Council species, but they excelled at practical applications and unconventional thinking. They shouldn't have been able to create a stable tachyon field with their level of technology, marveled a Moravian physicist. But they bypassed the traditional approach entirely and found a simpler method that none of us had considered. This pattern repeated across multiple technologies. Humans had developed functional solutions that, while less elegant than Council equivalents, worked surprisingly well. sometimes better, in crisis situations. Then, 7 days after the destruction of the Scout, the alarms sounded again. This time, it wasn't a single entity but dozens, a proper void swarm attack force, approaching from multiple vectors. In the hastily assembled Joint Command Center, representatives from the Council fleet and human vessels gathered around a tactical display. "Standard defensive formations won't work," said the Council fleet commander, a veteran Caldraxian. "Not against an enemy that can attack from any direction and ignore conventional shields." Captain Chen stepped forward. "We need to combine approaches. Your vessels have superior firepower and shielding. Ours have experience fighting the swarm and the tachyon technology to repel them." "A mixed species crew on each vessel," suggested Zivtal. "Human tactical advisors aboard Council ships, Council engineers aboard human vessels." The fleet commander's expression showed reluctance, but practicality won out. "Make it happen. We have 4 hours before they reach optimal attack range." What followed was unprecedented in Council history: the rapid integration of a new, technically primitive species into their military operations. Human tactical officers were transported to Council warships. Council engineers boarded human vessels. Communication systems were hastily adapted to ensure all ships could coordinate, and not a moment too soon. The void swarm arrived precisely as predicted, a seething mass of darkness punctuated by those sickly green lights. The joint fleet moved to meet them, with the station and refugee vessels at the center of their protective formation. "Remember," Chen's voice came through on the fleet-wide channel, "conventional weapons are ineffective until the entities are disrupted by tachyon fields. Coordinate your attacks. Field generators first, then concentrated fire when they're vulnerable." The battle that followed tested the hastily formed alliance to its limits. The void entities moved with disturbing intelligence, targeting the ships with tachyon emitters first. Several vessels were lost in the initial assault, their crews evacuating in escape pods that the remaining ships fought desperately to protect. Aboard the Council flagship, a human tactical officer named Rodriguez noticed a pattern in the swarm's movements. They're not just attacking randomly. They're communicating, coordinating. See how they pull back from strong points and concentrate on weaknesses. The Caldraxian fleet commander studied the display and nodded. "Then we create a false weakness. Draw them in, then trap them." The strategy worked. By deliberately weakening their formation in one sector, they lured a large concentration of void entities into a killing zone. When the trap was sprung, multiple ships activating tachyon fields simultaneously before collapsing them in sequence, the resulting cascade of energy disintegrated nearly a third of the attacking force. On the other front, a Council engineer aboard a human vessel suggested modifying their tachyon emitters to create a resonance effect between ships. "If we synchronize the field frequencies precisely, we could create overlapping zones of increased potency." The human captain agreed immediately. "Do it." These adaptations, human tactical insights combined with Council technical expertise, gradually turned the tide. After 6 hours of relentless combat, the remaining void entities began to retreat. "Don't let them escape," ordered the fleet commander. "If they report back to their main force." "Agreed," came Chen's voice. "All ships with operational tachyon emitters form a pursuit group. We finish this now." 3 hours later, the last void entity had been destroyed. The joint fleet limped back to the station, damaged but victorious. In the aftermath, as repair crews worked and medical teams treated the injured of all species, Captain Chen found herself standing beside Zivtal and the fleet commander on the station's observation deck. "We lost 17 ships," the fleet commander said solemnly. "Over 300 crew members, but we prevailed." "This time," Chen replied, "but there will be more. The swarm we encountered, it's just a fragment of their total force." Zivtal turned to her. "Then we will be ready. Together." The fleet commander nodded slowly. "Your people fought well, Captain Chen. And your technological adaptations proved effective beyond expectation. Necessity is a powerful motivator, Chen said with a tired smile. When we had to choose between innovation and extinction, the choice was clear. 2 days later, the full Galactic Council convened an emergency session. The Central Councilor's announcement was broadcast throughout Council space and to every human vessel. Today, we formally recognize the Human Alliance as an emergency protectorate of the Galactic Council. Their refugee fleet will be granted settlement rights on the habitable moon of Nereus IV. Furthermore, a joint technology exchange program will be established to combine human ingenuity with Council resources in preparation for potential future Void Swarm incursions. As the announcement concluded, Captain Chen turned to Zivtal, who had become something of a liaison between the humans and the Council. From refugees to allies in less than 2 weeks, she mused. Not how I expected our first contact with galactic civilization to go. The Council has existed for 12,000 years, Zivtal replied. In that time, many species have joined our community, but none quite like humans. Is that a compliment or a concern, Commander? Perhaps both, he admitted. Your species advances at an alarming rate when under pressure. Some Council members find that unsettling. Chen looked out at the stars beyond the station's viewport. We don't seek conflict, Commander. We never have. But we will always fight to survive and to protect others if we can. Zivtal followed her gaze. I believe you. And I think, in time, the rest of the Council will come to appreciate what humans bring to our community. Not just your technology or your tactical insights, but your perspective. Your humanity. As they stood there in companionable silence, watching the stars, the first human colony ships began their descent to their new home on Nereus IV's moon. Behind them, Council engineers and human scientists worked side by side, combining their knowledge to strengthen defenses against the darkness that lurked beyond the galactic rim. The warning that had once caused alarm throughout Council space. Caution. Incoming human war vessel would soon take on a very different meaning. For the enemies of galactic peace, it would become a reason to fear. For allies in danger, it would become a promise of hope. And for the humans themselves, it would become a reminder of how far they had come. From a species fighting for survival to valued members of a galactic community. The journey was just beginning.